Glenn, you're a very positive person about the forest products industry, its potential, and the development of its products or its resources into more value-added products. I'd just like to find out, how the increased productivity and value added within the industry can happen, and what part to play government programs and supporting services would help to make that happen.
Well, I am very positive, and I think one of the first reasons is Canada has a real advantage in having so much biomass, so much forest, and we have a great history, a long history of working in the forestry industry. So we know how to get the fiber out of the forest, and we know how to work with it. Having said that, the industry has also been through a really, really difficult time. But I think the worst is over, and I think most people do. There's still tough times ahead, and there's still going to be some more rationalization. But there's been enormous progress over the past decade. And so I think the sector, the industry is at a point in time where it has really made a lot of investments, and it is ready to grow into what we call the forest bioeconomy. And in terms of the role of government, I think it's to help and support. And so I think government can do that in a number of ways, and we do that, for instance, through the IFIT program, through de-risking technology investments, new technology. Governments can also help through regulations, by reducing regulations or by making regulations more standard across the industry. So for instance, as you look at the adoption of biomass heating, making regulations so that it's more cost effective for small communities to do that. And then finally, I think government can help through procurement and how it spends its money in terms of purchasing.
In the presentations this morning, you gave your federal government's programs to foster growth within the industry. And also there were several provincial people there outlining provincial programs. Is there any coordination between federal and provincial initiatives? And do you think that should increase in the future? And what would be the benefit of that?
Well, there is quite a bit of coordination. And so we work together as governments mainly through something called the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers. And so every province and the federal government and the territories are part of that. And CCFM ministers came together last year. There was a summit on forest innovation, and they put forward a declaration, some principles. And now moving forward, I think the challenge for the jurisdictions and the ministers is to develop an action plan to deliver on the promise of the Kenora Declaration. And I think we can do that. That's not to say we've done that. There's a lot of work ahead, but that's, I think, really the path forward.
In your presentation, you singled out engineered lumber and the building code changes which allow the construction of multi-story wooden frame buildings. And you singled that out as a tremendous success story. Please tell me how that happened and what sort of impetus that program needed and what sort of changes that program needed.
Well, I think it's been an interesting story because this is an area where, frankly, the Europeans were ahead of us. The technology for products like CLT, cross-laminated timber, was developed in Europe, in particular by the Austrians. But a few years ago, the Canadian industry really singled this out as an area where we could gain from. We made investments in it, we made investments in the science, and then in the codes and standards. And so, I think there was a real turning point just a few years ago when the Government of Canada, through Natural Resources Canada, put out a competition to build a tall wooden building greater than 10 stories. And we thought if success might look like we would get one building built. And in fact, it looks like we're going to have 2 or 3 buildings built. And the tallest in University of British Columbia in Vancouver is going to be the world's tallest wooden building at somewhere between 16 and 18 stories when it's built. And it is underway now. And so that's really, really exciting. And that's an example of, I think, of how government can be a factor in tipping the scale, because we're not investing a lot of money, but we are helping to defray the extra costs and the extra research that is needed to do the codes and standards work around things like fire, for instance, that will enable builders to say, this is a valid opportunity. And so, we're at a point where the whole world is excited about building with tall wood. And so while this building in UBC is going to be the tallest in the world when it gets built, I don't think it's going to be the tallest in the world for very long. There's a real renaissance in tall building, and Canada's at the forefront, but everybody's moving there.
So the market is pulling us?
Absolutely, the market is pulling us.
Very good. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.